prediction has been made, Mr. President. Hear ye, hear ye! Now on this February 2nd, Punxsutawney Phil, the seer of seers, prognosticator of all prognosticators, was awakened from his wintry nap at dawn on Gobbler's Knob. Phil looked to the skies and then, speaking in Groundhogese, directed the president to the proper scroll, which reads, "Another winter's slumbered pause so I could meet the crowd. Hard to sleep anyway when the party's this loud. I envy your energy. I envy the fun. I envy all of you and your opposable thumbs. But it's not what I feel, it's what I see and what you hear, so gather round and let me be clear. Atmosphere is a wonderful thing, and we can create our own and the weather it brings. It brings hope for the future and so much more. Maybe some Punxsutawney Phil write-in votes in 2024. But what this weather did not provide is a shadow or reason to hide. Glad tidings on this Groundhog Day. An early spring is on the way.
And welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. It's Groundhog Day. That was Punxsutawney this morning. Look, you know, he's wrong like 70% of the time, but it's a lot of fun. And if you ever get a chance to go and see that and party and hang out, it's one of the coolest things you could do if you're like Laura and I, and you like good old hearty fun, you like history, you like cozy atmospheres. Look, I don't know what it's like now, but geez. God, am I this old? Oh my God, I am like this old. Like 15, 20 years ago, it was a lot of fun. Maybe even more. I don't know. God, I don't want to do the math right now. My brain is resisting allowing me to calculate that number. But good food, good fun, good beer, good fun to have for all. And by the way, there was really good cider there, actually, too. If you're a fan of cider, it's really good cider. But there's a lot of stuff to do, a lot of little shops, a lot of little trinkets. It is a ball. But you know what? It's Groundhog Day in more ways than one. As we all know, the movie with Bill Murray, Groundhog Day, where he keeps reliving the same damn day all over again. Sometimes I feel like I'm in Groundhog Day every time it's election season, and I have to watch the same things happen over and over again. And despite my best efforts, and maybe every year my voice gets a little bit bigger, and maybe eventually I will not have to do this as much. That is, of course, the goal of why I even do this publicly. Maybe that's my dream. But for now, I will have to repeat myself that the polls pull the same crap every year. Sometimes it's their fault, sometimes it's not. All right. So there's the same nonsense we hear every year. That is largely the fault of certain people, but it is what it is, and that's why we love it. That's why we call it the silly season. Only a few more days, folks, until the primary in Nevada, which is meaningless, and then the caucus, which happens 2 days later. All right, and then we will move into South Carolina. Things will pick up again. I know we're in a bit of a lull stage right now, but the polling is coming fast and furious, and I keep telling people to keep their eye on the aggregate. That not all polls are created equal. There are repeat offenders. Groundhog Day. There are repeat offenders in this business. They do the same thing year after year, and they either cannot get it right or they don't want to get it right. And they're the same people who make the same comment, provide the same commentary over it over and over and over again. And I do think there are some people this year that are really trying to do a better job. And I've pointed to them before, but like Byron York, for instance, I hope he takes what I say in my replies to him seriously, because he looks legitimately confused as to why certain things are the way they are. And hopefully I can help him and other people who follow him understand what that is. All right. If you like the videos, don't forget to like them. Share them far and wide. Share them far and wide. If you're on YouTube, mosey on over to Rumble and subscribe over there. Like it over there. And then vice versa. All of this really does help. These metrics do help more than you can know. And of course, share it, share it, share it. Because today, You cannot miss the interview at 12:30 that we're going to have with John O'Shea. Look, there's sometimes no way to bring bad news without hurting good people. And that's just what's going to happen today. I mean, there's no way around it. It's a big deal. There is a shadow war going on in Texas right now. You have the one that's very public. Of course, they have all their drama over immigration and the fight with the federal government. But there is a fight for the GOP in Texas right now. The public one is what you're seeing with Ken Paxton. And then there's something behind Ken that he doesn't even understand or know about that is going on. And it's a big deal. In an election season like this one, you would never think that what I'm going to tell you, what we're going to talk about, is even possible, considering, these same losers ran the worst presidential campaign in the history of presidential campaigns. But the president does not know about it. He's being given very bad advice. He's being duped. And he's being manipulated, and that's all there is to it. And someone's got to blow the whistle here, because I love to tell voters about things the political class does not want them to know about. That's kind of our job here, along with explaining how election forecasting and polling works. It's like telling people the story that the political class is trying to hide from them. There is always another story, and the consultants don't want you to hear it. The political class, the ruling class, doesn't want you to hear it. And I just don't play by those rules. I don't give a damn. I just don't care. So we're going to talk about that at 12:30. People cannot miss this interview. Share it far and wide. Share far and wide. I want to see a lot more people watching on that stream by the time we get to 12:30, folks. I'm not kidding. It's a big, big deal. All right. In the meantime, let's bring up the polling, man. It's been like I said, fast and furious. Of course, contribute to the public polling project if you can. The link is in the description. Also share that far and wide. We're going to poll South Carolina, maybe twice. And we're definitely going to have to get a new national poll in the tracker. We cannot end this season with 5 candidates and not an update to the national tracker. And it looks like this season is coming to an end. I'm not sure Nikki Haley will even make it to South Carolina, not because she doesn't have Democrats funding her and pushing her along, not because her job, her role, her motive has expired. It has not. Her role is to hurt Donald Trump. She is no longer running for the Republican nomination. She is running to sabotage the Republican nominee in 2024. And she has the help of Democrats and Democratic donors to do it. Reid Hoffman and some other Democratic groups have jumped ship, but there was already money put in the pot to do it. I can see the registrations. I see them daily in some cases in some of these states. So they are doing this and spending a fortune, which is going to cost the GOP, we have talked about, a lot of money. So her role is saboteur, and we need a head-to-head in the tracker before the season comes to an end. All right, so because ultimately she's going to have to decide whether or not she wants to get completely smoked in her own home state. As all of these polls have shown, recent polls that have come out, you're probably going to see them when I bring this thing up on the screen, because we're going to scroll through some other ones and they're just there. As you'll see, there just aren't enough. There's 2 problems with her plan in South Carolina. There just aren't enough independents and Democrats that would be compared to like New Hampshire. We've talked about this. There aren't enough of them. And then secondly, of those, there are far fewer who are behavioral Democrats than what you see in New Hampshire. They're not going to be, seething like, orange man bad, give me another splash of patchouli. They're not going to do that. They're different people. And independents in New Hampshire don't even represent independents nationwide. They're New England liberals who call themselves independents. There aren't many of them. Even in the low country in South Carolina, they're just not there. Are there some? Sure. Are there many? No. North Carolina, same thing. Virginia, where they're planning this, there is more, definitely, in Northern Virginia. But they have their own primary to compete in. So that takes some of those actual Democrat registrations off the board in an open primary, less like South Carolina. And she's going to have to decide whether or not, because you live with that permanent embarrassment forever. He only beat Marco Rubio. He smoked him. What was it, 8 points? But it's not going to be 8 points in South Carolina. And by her own standard, she said, we need to do better in South Carolina than we did in New Hampshire. Well, everyone who lives on planet Earth knows that's not going to happen. And I know sticking around, waiting to see if you get that momentum because she's parked in South Carolina while Donald Trump is also, of course, giving attention to Nevada. Even though he's going to win it, he doesn't need to. The point is, you want to give voters attention. You want voters to know you still care, right? So, and then, of course, he's looking beyond that. Texas, it's now 80-20. So this is coming to an end soon, and we need a national number. Nikki Haley will have to decide whether she wants that permanent embarrassment, but her days in the Republican Party are over. The damage that she has done, the bridges that she has burned, her days as a Republican are over. She will be calling herself a Democrat after this cycle. Mark my words. Or she will pretend to be a Republican and be one of those division sowers where she goes on MSNBC and CNN and pretends that she's still a Republican and the media still pretends along with them like a John Bolton or something. I guarantee you John Bolton isn't voting Republican. I guarantee you. I guarantee you all of those other Republican voices on CNN and MSNBC have been voting for Democrats since at least 2018, if not that they voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I guarantee you. All right. So let's bring up the new polls and see what's going on. Let's make it bigger than me. So first, let's talk about the Quinnipiac poll, which looked like it was an outlier. And I kept telling people, this doesn't look right. Quinnipiac has major problems. I'm going to start calling out some. It's not that I am denouncing or trashing these people. It's just the truth. Quinnipiac, I think, took a lot of our criticism to heart and the criticism of others, and they did decent during the midterm, but presidential elections are very different. And in 2016, they didn't call a single battleground state correctly. Fast forward to 2020, they screwed up every single one. They even had Biden ahead in Iowa and Ohio. They had Biden up by 4 in Ohio. Trump, of course, won by 8. They had Biden up by 1 in Iowa. Of course, Trump won it by 8. They had overestimated Biden's national support by 7 points. They had him up by 11. He won by 4. So presidential elections are problematic because there are a lot more, more problematic for these people because there are more people who come out and they don't know who to believe and who not to believe. And then also they are subject to typical response biases that maybe other polls have learned a lot better to, have learned a lot more than they have to deal with. In any event, they moved on and they did change their methodology and they started incorporating some of these mixed modes that we had talked about. Vendors matter, however. So for instance, you see the Yahoo News poll. Let's go down. Where is it? Where's it? It's Biden plus. There it is. In the Yahoo News poll, Biden is ahead of Haley by 5 points. Yet you have the Quinnipiac poll and the CNN poll grossly overstating her support. Why is that? Because CNN, even though they've moved on to some mixed modes, still heavily favor the live caller, traditional live caller interviews. That is I'm just telling you. I mean, media can keep pretending that's the gold standard all they want, but results matter. If it was the gold standard, we wouldn't have outperformed them year after year after year after year. Others who have come along in the new age have not been taken with the same level of credibility that some of these others would not have outperformed them year over year over year over year. By the way, Fox News too had, Biden up by like 7 in Wisconsin. That was their final poll. And they just released one yesterday. So it really goes to show you apples to apples. But in any event, they have even started to incorporate some different modes. Yahoo is an online panel. Dynata is the online panel that is associated. That's the one used by Quinnipiac. I can tell you Dynata is left-leaning. Most people in this business are left-leaning. I love them. We have a great relationship. They've always been good to me. But they did, we had lost touch because I went to different panels and I'm just, I don't know that I want to give away my secrets. It's in the methodology. I mean, people want to dig for it, but there are metrics we can use and they are used by the industry to see who has the best quality panel, especially when they're deduped against the voter file or matched against the voter file. And it's not it. We had lost touch for a while and they called me back and they were like, "Hey, Rich, how you been? I'm your new guy," and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we do a lot with left-leaning people. As you know, we're a progressive data provider. And I'm like, whoa. You do know you're on the phone with the People's Pundit, right, buddy? Google it. Do me a favor, Google it. And he was like, shit. I'm like, it's all right. I know most of the industry is left-leaning, and I didn't leave you because you were left-leaning. I left you because your metrics and the panel were poor. You allowed COVID to disrupt the representative nature of your panel. So that's why we left. And by the way, we made that decision, God bless, when we were polling for the Epoch Times, and we conducted dual polls, put them and measured them against all these metrics, talked to the Epoch Times about it, and eventually we went with the others, who now engulfed another company. And so we're getting to be now where we're at a point where everyone knows what panel is used by other people. Yahoo, The Economist, YouGov has become so big. They're providing such large data sources. You may be asking how YouGov is inched to the right a little bit, and everybody that uses YouGov. And then you can see Haley is performing much worse in the Economist poll, in the Yahoo News poll. Well, YouGov got too big for its own britches. And now YouGov is forced to come to our folks. So I'm not going to get into it, but they need to buy responses from us. So that's the way this thing is going. Anyway, why does this matter? Because some panels are excellent, and I argued this in 16. Excellent at finding voters that will not participate on the phone. Even SMS, maybe you text them, hey, will you take a survey? It's still subject to a certain level of response bias that we really can see it. Now, there are design effect issues with online sampling, all of that. There's no doubt it has its own challenges, but they're in a presidential cycle. If you rely only on phone interviews, you're going to get what you see at CNN, and you're going to get, because Quinnipiac leans heavily on, even though they're mixed, they're leaning heavily on the phone live callers. So even using Dynata for the call center when they're talking about live interviews. And so instead of it being a 50-50 split, maybe, or whatever, different balance that pollsters like to use for midterms and presidentials, for us personally, we like more phone during midterms. That's what we learned last cycle. Off-cycle elections, you can still, we still like to favor more of a mix, but we do lean more to the phone, not live, but like SMS. We'll lean towards that in midterms because we want higher interest voters, more primary, higher propensity voters, and older voters, by the way. And that's who they're reaching when they're making these Haley ridiculous numbers, because all you see is Biden really fall a little bit. Maybe Haley ticks up a point or two. But the truth is, why in all of those modes are Nikki Haley's favorables still packed with a huge number who say, I have no idea who she is? Meanwhile, on the panels, that's not always true. Either they don't know her and they're not voting for her, or they know her and they're not voting for her. It's very different. That's why Emerson has her now. She's up by 1, but she's been down 2, down this, down that. Harvard-Harris, down 4, down 2, maybe up 1, and a much lower level of support for all of these candidates. It is not a mystery. And again, I was referring to Byron before, but he was kind of pondering over this yesterday and the day before on Twitter. Like, why is her numbers like this if so many people don't know who she is? Those higher propensity voters will still choose a generic that they don't know over someone who is unpopular, like Joe Biden is. That will not be representative of the entire electorate. It will not. So when you see polls like ours, Emerson, Harvard, Trafalgar, all these others, she's doing much worse. Much worse. And that is what you would expect, and that is the reality. Because I'm going to say it again, and now hear Fox News mixing it up, guys, right? Trying to do a better job. We'll see what they do. There is no universe where Nikki Haley is up by 13 points like the CNN poll shows, but can't win Texas or Wisconsin or Georgia. There's no universe. The University of Houston poll is a decent poll. It just came out and showed she is neck and neck with Biden in Texas. Neck and neck. And now we're polling her and Ron DeSantis will lose Iowa. Ohio, probably. There hasn't been a lot of polling in it. She would probably lose Ohio too. Why? Because start using your heads and don't just look at the top line of these numbers. Folks, are the voters in the Ohio Valley who voted for Barack Obama overwhelmingly and then switched to Donald Trump, are they going to vote for Nikki Haley? How did they feel about Mitt Romney? How did those demographics feel about Mitt Romney? There's no way. And again, a ton of her voters who are voting in primaries will never vote for her in the general election. They look, it's right there in the AP Vocast. You can see it clear as day. Trump is winning the pro-life voter, and yet he's doing worse with the pro-choice voter, even though his position on abortion is a more moderate position than hers, or one that she claims to have. How is that? Those are Democrats voting for her, and behavioral Democrats. And when the exit pollster asks them, they just say it, and they give they reveal themselves. But in a general election, her position is not tenable in these states. How did Ohio fare with those ballot initiatives? How did the Ohio Valley vote on those ballot initiatives? How did Central and Southern beyond Franklin County vote? Not good for the right. What about war? No chance. You think they're going to support somebody like Nikki Haley? You're nuts. In Michigan, these polls that show her up, you would have to believe that voters in Macomb County who only vote for Donald Trump, if you run an inference model right now, you will see it is still majority Democrat in Macomb County, yet Trump wins it overwhelmingly. Other Republicans don't. You would have to believe that somehow those voters, they're still going to vote for the Democrat because they will pick the Democrat over a warmongering Republican like Nikki Haley. Even if it's a choice between her and a warmongering Democrat, they'll still take the Democrat because at least Democrats will throw them crumbs. At least Democrats won't threaten their Social Security. At least Democrats won't threaten their health care. At least Democrats won't push for these crazy abortion things. Sorry, it's just out of the mainstream. And I personally am as pro-life as it gets, but that doesn't matter. My personal opinion doesn't matter. All that matters is the electoral viability of another candidate's position. And you would have to believe those voters are somehow going to forsake her like they did to Mitt Romney against Barack Obama. He won Macomb County, Barack Obama. And yet somehow in Oakland, where they're rich, white, educated people who are liberal are going to vote for Nikki Haley over Joe Biden. Give me a break. He's still going to win Oakland by 16, 15 points. The only difference is that she will perform like Tudor Dixon in Macomb and Monroe County, and she will get creamed. The only difference is that she will not get the margins out of the Upper Peninsula that Donald Trump will get. The only difference is that she will not get the sheer number of votes out of the Upper Peninsula that Nikki Haley is going to get. This is a response bias. End of story. And here, she can't even win Georgia. By the way, where's that number? Where's the Haley versus there it is. Thank you. At least for a second there, I was thinking they didn't include it. Biden's at 35 and 37. She still can't beat him. Even with third parties in the race, she can't beat him. Trump does, +3. See, notice Biden's number only falls a little bit. Those people, once they figure out who she is, will vote for her. Will vote for him once they figure out who she is. It is a response bias. Hope you're listening, Byron, because that's the truth. And if you would like to, I wholly invite you to watch when we start polling again nationally. I will show you the difference between the modes. It is clear as day. And some months it won't happen. Some months you'll get a more representative phone sample. And it's like, okay, Haley's down anyway in this. And then some months you'll get older seniors who are more moderate, who Biden is doing better with. And, it fluctuates not because opinion is fluctuating. It's because it is subjected to more forms of bias. Now, there are forms, of course there are, with survey design online. But if you learn how to deal with it, It's a much more stable way to track. Much more. So that is why you see certain polls where she just does worse and certain polls where she just does ridiculously. She's just performing ridiculously strong. Again, it's Groundhog Day all over again. Mitt Romney had the same benefit in 2012. How did that work for him? All right. Why? Because he was a governor. Rick Santorum was a senator. For years, people knew who Rick Santorum was. So there you have it. Yeah. All right. We got to move on here. Would say, especially if we want to get to the Q&A. Laura, I think if she's not in the chat already, grabbing up and interacting with you guys and grabbing up your questions. Oh, there she is. She is. I was just going to say you'll be there very soon. Okay. I was just going to say, if you're not already, that you'll be there very soon, and give them the heads up. All right. You know what? Let's take a real quick word from our sponsor. And when we come back, we're going to have an interview you cannot miss. So you have 30 seconds to 60 seconds to share this video like crazy because you cannot miss this interview. All right. It's just one of those times where Rich is going to do what he does, which is give the background story of something that you're never going to hear about from any big media outlet or anything. That's so you got 30, 60 seconds while I talk about our great friends at Jam and Bean. Woo-wee! Those bacons. Anyway, whether you're a tea drinker, coffee drinker, their gourmet popcorn is amazing. You guys know it. I don't have to give you the rundown on Jam and Bean. They're adding new products all the time. The freeze-dried candy I'm in love with. If you sign up for a new subscription at Jam and Bean, use the promo code TPP40. There it is right there. TPP40 at jamandbean.com, and that will give you 40% off when you sign up initially. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Nothing says love. I love you like bacon. All right. That will give you 40% off on your initial subscription fee. Plus, you will still get 10% off every month when your subscription renews. Send us your feedback. We love to hear it. Let us know what popcorn you tried or whatever you got. The maple syrup in Michigan is dynamite. It's different than Vermont. So if you're looking for something different, I would suggest adding that to the cart. My kids love it now, by the way. Right, Laura? They love that stuff. I mean, I still love Vermont maple syrup. I do. It's just that this is it's something different to have. And it's, it's unique and it's delicious. Again, Jam and Bean, links on the screen right there. Promo code TPP40 at checkout. Get yourself 40% off. All right. All right. Let me bring on my, first of all, my good friend and friend of the show, John O'Shea, running in Texas's 12th Congressional District with the endorsement of his friend, longtime friend, Ken Paxton, going up against several, now they're are two technical candidates. That just John, I don't even want to acknowledge the other one, but we have to in order to fully tell this story about what's going on. But first, let me welcome you to the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, Rich. Good to be on with you. Hey, Laura, how are you?
Yeah. Living the dream, my friend. Living the dream.
So welcome back from you were on the lam. Welcome back to the States. I mean, the most ridiculous nonsense in the world. But first of all, how you feeling before we get into all this? How's the ground looking? I got to tell you, when you hear from outside sources about somebody's ground game, that's a good sign. I know you got a lot of volunteers out there. You're doing it grassroots, as grassroots as it gets, and you have a lot of people who are willing to knock on doors for you and make phone calls. I heard you have done really well in candidate forums, but when a third party tells you, who's not like your campaign manager, my buddy, or you, and a third party tells you, you know what, they have a presence here that is usually a very good sign for that campaign. How are you feeling? How's everything looking on the ground? Give us the rundown since we last spoke.
Sure. Well, when I first announced I was running against Congresswoman Kay Granger, who was a 14-term incumbent and chairwoman of appropriations, and Kevin McCarthy was the Speaker of the House and had been shown to be more than willing to use the Congressional Leadership Fund to go after America First candidates. So I always viewed this as an uphill challenge, and I understood that and I embraced it. I thought that the voters needed a clear dichotomy as somebody who actually represents the will of the voter. That for too long we've had these rhino establishment types that just are out of touch with the voter, more self-serving and interested in their own power, and not concerned with the average American citizen. And our initial poll that you did, one of the questions that we asked in multiple ways to make sure we weren't getting noise, but we were getting the true signal was, what does this district lean? Is this district America first, or is this district the more traditional country club type Republicans, tax cuts for the wealthy, limited government, and cozy up to the corrupt establishment? And your numbers showed it. It's 3-1. It's it's an America first district. It's a country, an area of the country that's very red, even though people try and portray it as purple. And so since Congresswoman Granger stepped out, she handpicked her successor. She told a friend of mine that she wouldn't endorse me, that she'd find somebody else because I was too conservative. And, I wear that as a badge of honor. And so, I went from running against somebody who's currently in Congress to running against somebody who's currently in the House State Representatives, and who tries to portray himself as a strong leaning conservative. And frankly, he doesn't have the track record to back that. So, I knew I was going to get outspent. Look, this guy's having fundraisers thrown for him by Karl Rove and events up in DC already. He's got the money, but what he doesn't have outside of a few kind of more traditional establishment type Republicans in the area, which constitutes several business leaders and people in local government. But what he doesn't have is the vote of the public. And, to your point, I've been very humbled by the response from the precinct chairs, from the grassroots organizations, and from volunteers. We have event after event here where volunteers show up. They show up at the forums there to support me. They're out door knocking. They're having their own yard signs printed up. They're doing flyers and push cards and dropping videos and not being asked to. So, it's one of those things where if I had to choose between the money or the people, I'd choose the people every day and twice on Sunday. And right now, that's what I feel we're showing right now, is that this is a 2-horse race, despite, as you mentioned, a couple of other people who jumped in late in the game. And it hasn't changed. This is America first versus the establishment. Just the names have changed. And now I'm running up against Kay Granger 2.0.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up, of course, he's talking about Craig Goldman. He is also a Dade Phelan sycophant, House Speaker, which is the public fight that is going on, John, is with your friend Ken Paxton, the Attorney General,
Right.
Because of what they did to him, and they're trying to rehatch again. He was, of course, acquitted. There were, this particularly one organization filled with a bunch of attorneys, and liberal Republicans.
Texans for lawsuit reform.
That's right. Texans for lawsuit reform spread around a lot of money, threw around a lot of weight. They lost the fight. They won't let it go. And for people who aren't paying attention, they try to rehatch it if they can get to another senator. And they're doing that now. They're trying to do that now. And Ken wants to, he wants to take these people head on. Here is but then there's and the other candidate, wait, let's talk about this because we can bring up this other candidate that jumped in late with this. Then there is more of a shadow fight behind the scenes. And that is a fight for control by the consultant class over candidates. And it's a fight the president doesn't seem to be aware of at all. And unfortunately, there is, no way not to bring Ken into this. I'm sorry. I'm telling you straight up. There's just no way. And I'll let you, do your own thing here. But Axiom Strategies, which is Jeff Rowe's group. And for those who anyone who's watching the show probably need no introduction to Jeff Rowe and his group of cronies and his consultant class, fanboys out there. They are all about trying to gather up as many congressmen and women, especially in the safe districts, and then even at the state level that they're now meddling. But they assumed, because they run Ken's campaign, and for people who don't know, he's the only one that Trump gave an okay to, a thumbs up. I don't like Jeff Rowe. I don't like the people at Axiom, but I love Ken. So I'm giving Ken a pass here on this. If you go through people Donald Trump endorses, one of the things he'll ask people all the time is, who runs it? Or who runs your campaign? Does Jeff Rowe run your campaign? He cannot stand Jeff Rowe. And for those who need an introduction, He was in Never Back Down, the super PAC supporting Ron DeSantis. He is one of a few people that will go down in history as running the worst presidential campaign in the history of presidential campaigns. I'm not going to go through this again. If you're arguing that point, then you don't know much about politics. They vaporized more than $200 million altogether between the PAC and the campaign and out other groups. But Never Back Down got, I think we're at now 140 million, maybe 20, 30 of that went into Jeff Rowe's pocket. So in order to destroy a once promising Republican governor's career, he got filthy rich over it. Meanwhile, while he was doing that, he was sending his little representative down to Texas to gobble up these campaigns. And because you're Ken's friend, it was assumed, and I want you to tell as much as what you feel comfortable, tell the story about how this went, because they thought they were going to get your campaign, that they were going to run your campaign. And they did not. And then we have to talk about what they've been doing ever since. But it's more than just you, John, which we have to get into. But give people a little bit of that backstory, best you can.
Sure. Well, okay. So first of all, let me, because it's really kind of a two-front war that's going on here in the state of Texas. Candidly speaking, for example, the Texas House, of which my current now front runner opponent has resided for the last 10 years. The Texas House is 86 to 64 Republican to Democrat. And yet they have continued to have significant Democrat influence inside the party.
Yep.
And in large part, that's because there is this block. In fact, Texas Scorecard, which is the conservative grassroots newsletter here in Texas, did a documentary called The Texas Heist. And in it, they try and explain to the voting public, why does conservative legislation die? Why does our agenda die in the Texas House when we keep electing Republicans? And what they've shown is that there's a cabal. In fact, they labeled them the Dirty Dozen. And my opponent, Craig Goldman, is prominently featured in that. In fact, Dade Phelan, who is the Speaker of the House, colluded with the Democrats to be named Speaker. When you get more votes from Democrats than you do Republicans, because he peeled them off in a block and then went to the Republicans and said, look, if you want your legislation to pass, if you want key committee assignments, you have to come with me. Well, so Dade Phelan is squarely in Donald Trump's crosshairs right now, and rightly so. Good for him. But he's got two lieutenants. He's got a guy here in Fort Worth named Charlie Guerin, his brother was a Democrat, Pete Guerin, who was way more conservative than Charlie ever considered being. And then his second lieutenant is Craig Goldman. And Craig Goldman, like I said, portrays himself as a conservative. But let me go through a few numbers. Not only was he named in the Texas Scorecard heist movie, it's a part of the Dirty Dozen, Texans for Fiscal Responsibility gives him a 52. Young Conservatives of Texas give him a 62. Texas Right to Life give him a 68. And in fact, the best score I could find for him was American Conservative Union gave him a 77. So hardly ringing, conservative bona fides. And oh, by the way, he was instrumental in Ken's impeachment vote. They prioritized border security and school choice with Ken's impeachment in secret in a star chamber type process, more reminiscent of the Soviet Union than the Texas, Congress. And as Ken said on video at a fundraiser that he threw for me, while there was actual testimony going on during that hearing that was swaying Republican voters to come over and vote not to impeach Ken, he was on the floor whipping the vote, saying he didn't care about the Constitution. He didn't care about due process. If you didn't vote for Ken's impeachment, there were going to be repercussions. So we have that fight going on. That one's a little more visible. But like I said, I feel like I have to educate the voters about that. So, for example, I was out in Parker County last night at their GOP candidate forum, and I had to explain to several people, look, Goldman is going to portray himself as a conservative, and he talked tough about the border. Look, it took 4 special sessions for the House to pass border legislation. By the way, I always think a good indication of character is what you do when people aren't watching. So before he knew the seat was going to be opened by Kay Granger and he was going to jump right in, there was a vote that passed the Senate for a constitutional amendment that would have been on the ballot this last November in our election. And all it stipulated, because they're allowing the illegal aliens in, the Republicans are doing it because they want cheap labor and they want more consumer markets. And then the Democrats are doing it because they're trying to grant amnesty and give them the right to vote, as we're seeing in liberal states and municipalities. Well, guess what? The Texas Senate passed 29-1 a measure that would have been a constitutional amendment saying you had to be a U.S. citizen to vote in any Texas election. It went to the House where it died. You had a block of Republicans who voted present along with the Democrats. Even they know they couldn't vote nay because that was a bridge too far, but they voted present rather than supporting it. And Craig Goldman was that. So if he can't even support the notion that you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote in Texas elections, I don't know how you can give any credibility to the fact that you're strong on the border. So,
and then there's but then there's that's the public. There's a public part of this, which you're,
Right.
and I understand you want to give everybody context. And then there's the private part, which before I let you, because I'm just going to give you the floor. I just want people to understand and keep this in their mind beforehand that this meddling and in this private stuff you're going to hear about, the Team Roe, plays both sides of the fence. And by the way, I was able to get multiple other candidates to confirm that at some point, people from Jeff Roe's firm, his organization, had basically, John, tried to work with two candidates in the same race in a primary. So it is a clear conflict of interest. But what they really are trying to do is like sabotage one and help somebody else. So they are even meddling when sometimes they don't even end up with a horse in the race. They're still trying to do it. And I think and I'm going to, before I give you the floor, I just want to say this. What I think is what's so pressing about this issue and this fight in Texas is that because they do run Ken's campaign, I don't think the president understands that sometimes he's getting duped into supporting people that they really wanted to push instead of the right person. And there's no better way to put it. But I'll leave you the floor and go from here.
Sure. So, to that end, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's somebody who jumped into this race and seems more hell-bent on actually attacking me than actually trying to take out the establishment choice. And at first we thought, well, maybe this is just because they're trying to gain traction. And they found out that I'd already sewn up kind of the grassroots and the precinct chairs and in a number of the big churches around here and gotten their support. And I gotten their support because I jumped in early. Well, kind of backtrack a little bit. When I first told Ken that I was going to run and I first met with our newly, the person who was the Republican primary winner for county judge, they both used the same gentleman at Axiom. In fact, he also represents Senator Ted Cruz. And so I was strongly encouraged to talk to him. We visited several times and he spec'd his time with me.
And that's Nate Schatzline, by the way. You're trying to, right?
No, he's a state representative.
Okay. Popular judge. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes and I wrote sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry. It's Nick Maddox. And so I visited with him, spent time with him. Ultimately, there was some things that I wanted to do. And Don and I were visiting, and look, we said, hey, we're going to be bold in this. We're going to tell the truth. We're going to be 100% America first, and we're going to understand that we're running as outsiders. Look, my candidacy is very akin to President Trump's on a much smaller scale, and that I had no political background. I had no political aspirations. I see a country that is dying on the vine, and I see two paths that we could go down. One, restoring our constitutional republic, the other one into this full-blown cultural neo-Marxist authoritarian state that I absolutely refuse to consent or comply with. So, when you're taking on a race like that, you understand that the stakes are high and it's kind of climbing a tall mountain, but that's okay. I was quite comfortable with that. And so when I started visiting with Axiom about this and talking about what I wanted to do, the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to announce early because I didn't have any name ID or recognition. There were people inside the party who knew me as a precinct chair, knew my support for a number of the grassroots organizations, but I wasn't a common name in the district. And I figured I was going to have to work very hard for a long period of time to let people know exactly who I was and let them hear my message and see if it resonated with them. The second thing I wanted to do is I wanted to show Congresswoman Granger the respect of sitting down with her and explaining to her that I was going to be entering the race and see if that was something that she would consider, maybe dropping out, maybe any kind of, just showing her courtesy and respect. If nothing else, even if you don't care for the way that she votes on a number of issues, which I personally don't, she has been a public servant in this area and has done some good things for the community. And I just felt it was properly respectful. And Axiom said on both counts that that was a stupid idea, that I should wait, jump in late, and just try and hit it hard and fast. And, I didn't want to trust the consulting class. I just didn't think that they actually had a feel for the pulse here on the ground. And that, if I was willing to compromise on that kind of situation early on in my campaign, how would I be any different than anybody else who just kind of listens to the consultants and just kind of goes along to get along? That's not what I'm about, and that's not what I wanted to do. So I just decided to part ways. I thought it was amicable. I didn't know that there was, kind of hurt feelings regarding not giving them this race. But as it turns out, they were spewing a lot of garbage and nonsense that to a number of influential people who didn't know any better. And unfortunately for them, they didn't have kind of the discernment to actually come approach me and find out what portion was true and what portion was just complete fantasy. And then the second thing that we found out is that one of these late entrant
Yeah,
people who
wait,
jumped
don't
into
go
the
there
race-
yet. Wait, let me just say flat, because it's like better, one thing to make accusations, but I'm telling you right now, folks, I mean, I'm looking at texts that were sent to that county judge that John was talking about, and a popular state senator, Nate, who Schlatzline, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, State Representative Nate
Yeah.
Schatzline.
So we know that it was Nick Maddox who was sending these messages to people, and the accusations are just ridiculous. That you when you were in South America, you were actually there because you were running from the law or something. I mean, some of them are just totally outrageous and they're just ridiculous. It's like if that was true, what the hell are you doing back in Texas running for the U.S. Congress? I mean, none of it has any foundation, but these are just the dirty tricks they play. So when some of that gets cleaned up and it doesn't look like it's working, and people would ask, well, why would they do this? It's very simple. This is like bully consulting. They didn't get their way. They know this is a safe district, and that 95% success rate claim that they have on their website is totally bogus. It only includes, or not only, but it includes mostly the non-competitive districts that they have clients in. In competitive races, Axiom loses all the time. They lost to Trump just now. Jeff Rowe, he lost to Trump. They lost in Ohio. Can keep going. They lost in the Ohio Senate race against J.D. Vance. They lost against Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania. I mean, we could just keep going down the line. In the hard fights, they lose. They lost the race in Nevada. They were Adam Laxalt's consulting firm. They lost that. They're now being sued because the walking firm that was used. We know this story. They weren't walking anywhere. They were gambling at Caesars and faking data for Adam Laxalt. So instead, I mean, Adam Laxalt lost, John, by 2/10 of a percentage point. Imagine if their walkers actually did their job instead of like fattening up Jeff Rowe. They were actually doing their job, and he would have won. I mean, why did he underperform? Well, now we know it's a total scam. They didn't do their jobs.
And they also, by the way, got shut out across the board in our latest round of municipal elections here. And in fact, I have a friend who's a political consultant that picked up several of their clients' races because they felt that the candidates felt that they had been just absolutely abandoned by Axiom.
And we found out that Nick Maddox was sent down there to gobble up. Texas would be in flux, and that folks, if you're a Republican voter and you can't count on Texas, then you can't count on anybody. I mean, it's really that simple. You're not represented by anyone. And people other than Ken, again, like even the president gives Ken Paxton special exemption treatment here over this because Ken is such a fighter and he's proven himself time and time again. Right. But the sad part is, because, he's kind of given them an in there. All right. So when that didn't work and John didn't bite, they started spreading these rumors and doing this crap, trying to sabotage John. And when that didn't work, they bring in this guy. And at first, we didn't know where he came from. His name was Clint Doris. He's from Colorado. He's tried to run for different offices there. He's made some real, I mean, folks, the statements are insane. A couple of weeks ago, I found out he went to go meet with the Club for Growth, which John had met with and, whatever. John's more America First. We'll see how that goes now. But he starts talking crazy, apparently, according to people who are in this meeting. He's just talking nuts to people. And then when he gets up to leave, a wire falls out of his pocket. Like, and the guys at the Club for Growth were like, what the hell is going on here? They didn't understand what was going on, and he spent much of that time trashing John. So it was a little bit weird. And then, it doesn't take long for us to figure this out. I didn't have time to put it together in graphics because I got them late. But now that we have some paperwork, John, it's real easy. So Kawal Hobbs is on the paperwork. Nancy Reneker is for treasurer, by the way. Nancy Reneker. Hobbs worked at Never Back Down. Okay. So we know that there's a connection there to Jeff Rowe. And as far as Nancy Reneker goes, I mean, for crying out loud, it's the treasurer at Axiom. So, I mean, this is unbelievable. They planted this nutcase into this race to try to pull, even though they're not representing Goldman. They just are mad at you. They don't like America First, and they don't want America First to win. So now they're trying to sabotage John O'Shea. So maybe if they bring in this guy Clinton, because he is pretending to be America First and conservative, to try to split that vote with you, John, and then allow Goldman to win this race, win this primary. I mean, this is, and I'll let you respond to that, but I just wanted to let people know, like, there's a paper trail here. This isn't us making accusations. The text messages can be seen. We know who the rumors came from. And now here's a paper trail. Like, this guy would never have been able to go up to Axiom in any normal circumstance and get anyone in their orbit to back his campaign. He literally is a plant. They found him and planted him because they thought it would be someone who could take votes from you, John, in Parker and some of the other conservative areas of Tarrant County. Why? Well, then Goldman slips through, and Dade Phelan gets his buddy elected to Congress. Kay Granger gets her her replacement, her appointed replacement, elected in her chair, in her seat. But I'll let you respond to that before we get going, because I mean, it's insane. And by the way, John is the tip of the iceberg here. This is the thing. We're explaining to you John's situation in deep detail. And then, so we don't have to go into all of the other detail when we talk about some of these other races. But go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was actually visiting with one of the church elders of a large influential church here, who actually, to their credit, is very courageous in getting involved in politics.
Yeah,
and they understand that, there's spiritual warfare going on for this country right now. And so this elder, who is a very well thought of gentleman, had run for mayor here in the city and actually kind of garnered a lot of respect from people who didn't know who he was prior, sat down and visited. And then when he shared with me the accusations, and I was very transparent with him and explained exactly, my personal situation, who I was. But I said, look, there's one thing that I can absolutely irrefutably prove. I never hired Axiom, because the story that was given was that I was fired as a client of Axiom. I elected not to use
I forgot
Axiom.
that. I'm sorry. I forgot that.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, but I said, please point to one contract I ever signed. Please point to one payment I ever made. Did I visit with them? Absolutely. And, look, understand that I bear no personal animus to any of the players involved in here. In fact, they all profess to be Christians, and I don't say profess in a manner that I doubt their sincerity or belief, but I pray for them, because right now some of the things that I see that they're doing, quite frankly, don't embody the living word of Christendom and are not exemplary of how we're supposed to conduct ourselves. But like I said, I'm not afraid and unflinching to tell the truth. And these are things that, the facts don't lie. And, I don't know why they feel like they have to try and have their personal hooks into the entire state. We have a county judge who unfortunately is pushing them heavily on candidates. We have somebody who's actually running for Craig Goldman's spot right now in the Texas House, who I fervently endorse, and she chose to go with Axiom. And I shared with her my personal experience. And I know she's been told on multiple occasions to distance from me. And candidly speaking, I'm the one that's kind of got her name exposure and helped her. And I've told her, look, when I'm a positive for you, feel free to use me. Feel free to come to any of my events. I'll announce you. I'll let you speak. I will tell everybody how enthusiastically I support you. But if it's a situation like that, where they're more establishment type or more people in the pro-Axiom camp, don't hesitate to kind of shut me off at that point in time, and no hard feelings. But it is strange what's going on here. And I think people do need to be made aware of it, because, to your point, they don't have the track record that they say. And there's a reason why this state has kind of hung in the balance, when really the voting public here are thoroughly Donald Trump supporting America First voters. And there's no reason why we should have this rhino establishment, both in Austin and representing us from the state in Washington, D.C.
This reminds me a lot of what happened in the Tea Party movement. And by the way, these are all a lot of the same people, and they're very friendly with Karl Rove, very obviously. And they originally tried to fight the Tea Party. They lost, and then they realized they couldn't win head to head, so they had to do these like manipulation tactics behind the scenes, and even play pretender and poser, and then act like they were Tea Party, and in this case now it's act like they're America First, or get candidates that right. profess those principles and those beliefs, and because they can't win it head to head, so instead they just play like a mole, and then when they're in, they don't do what you expect to do. One of the biggest fights right now is Dade Phelan, and it being the House Speaker in Texas. There is now obviously Ken Paxton endorsed Covey, this guy Covey, who is running, and Donald Trump endorsed him as well. And John, I'm out of respect for you, I'm going to leave some of my harshest criticism for Ken when you're done. But when you're gone, I'm serious, because listen, you're a grown ass man, and you are in charge of your own life. And I'm sorry. So, my role is a little bit different than your, a lot different than yours, obviously. But I can tell you, and we forgot, let me just backpedal a second here or take a step back and remind people, when they were making those allegations, they kept saying, like Nick Maddox kept saying, and that's why I fired him. That's why he's not worthy of that position. And I can tell you, like, there is no doubt, privy to every meeting John had, he sat and heard the guy out. He never hired him. There was never, any contract or anything like that. And meanwhile, he's telling people that he had to break off this contract with John because of these things. And it's total bunk. They're just full of it. In the case of, and I got to give people this little backstory, okay? Because in the case of Dade Phelan's challenger now, all right, there was somebody else. And this is a big problem. I mean, this is a big problem. Donald Trump at an event in Mar-a-Lago grabbed, and I don't know if I should say his name, but grabbed this guy and said, look, find me someone to challenge Dade Phelan, and I will endorse them, and we will smoke this guy and get rid of him. And he said, all right. Covey was not that guy. He's a lawyer, and his name is Brian Missoula. He was that guy. Ken had no idea. A couple nights ago, he asked, like, what happened to that other guy? And he had no idea that it was his own team who ran this dude out of the race. Maxium went and basically talked the guy out of running, even though all of these high-level endorsements were already set up in the bag. He was a much, much strong. I've never met Covey. I'm not trying to dog the guy. You know him, probably. I don't. Just simply saying that Brian Missoula was a stronger candidate. At least would have tried to force him in a runoff, John. And if not, have other people in the race, like Brian and Covey, would have pulled Phelan down and potentially forced him into a runoff. Now it's head-to-head with Covey, who nobody believes is even going to force Dade Phelan into a runoff. Let me break everybody's heart who is grassroots listener right now. Dade Phelan's going to win because Axiom Strategies, Jeff Rowe's team, and Nick Maddox decided that they were going to meddle and chase Brian Missoula out of this race. Now, Dade Phelan is even with Trump's endorsement and Paxton's endorsement, I just don't think he has the juice. And by the way, not too many other people do. I'm not saying if you were going to vote for him, don't vote for him, folks. I'm not trying to influence you like that. I'm trying to temper your expectations. Dade Phelan has not been around and has not been able to pull off what he's been able to pull off because he's an idiot or because he's a lightweight. He knows what he's doing, and you needed the right person or the right dynamic. With two people, splitting the votes, you needed the right thing to pull them away. I don't want to put you in a bad position here, John, but I got to ask you, because now Ken runs and gets Covey the endorsement from Donald Trump. Trump has no clue about what happened here with Axiom. I got to get you to respond. How does he not know this? How does he not know that Axiom is influencing his scheduler to give you a hard time about getting a date for fundraising or cooperation and stuff like that? How does he not know this? I got to ask you to somewhat at least try to defend your friend here, because, they have my email list is not good enough for me, buddy. It's not.
Well, candidly speaking, I think unfortunately Ken is taking on a multi-tiered fight. I mean, similar to what President Trump is doing. He still has the securities allegation charges that go back to 2015, which is just an absolute witch hunt.
Yeah.
He's got now, as you mentioned, there's an outgoing senator who said maybe they might drag up the impeachment again because that was such a glowing success for the anti-America First crowd. And then he's trying to shift the Texas House. I mean, one thing that I am in great admiration about is that he's trying to single-handedly take on this Republican establishment that makes up the Texas legislature. And he's endorsed over 60 different state representatives who are primarying incumbents who violated the Texas Constitution, violated state law, violated historical precedent here, and actually worked on Ken's impeachment. And so, in fact, he mentioned it the other night at my fundraiser. I'm the only federal race that he's endorsing. And with regard to endorsements, I'll tell you this. I said this last night at the Parker County GOP candidates forum. Look, there are only a few endorsements that really matter to me. I mean, the precinct chairs, the grassroots organizations, the churches, because they represent the people. But as far as elected officials, there aren't many of them that I admire. In fact, if I did, I wouldn't be running because, candidly speaking, so many of these people have abandoned us or betrayed, our principles and the reason why they're supposed to be representing us. So I don't give a lot of stock to some of these endorsements. But there are two political endorsements to me that truly matter. And that is Ken Paxton in the state of Texas, because he is the America First champion who is fighting for the constitutional rights and for his constituents. And that's President Trump. I mean, because clearly he is the leader of this movement as much as the national GOP. And, to your point about the RNC and the money that has just absolutely been wasted for a foregone conclusion when we could have been better at, mobilizing and preparing logistics for the general, as opposed to this absolute charade that just burned money. And as you mentioned, made several political consultants very wealthy. I mean, it's a travesty. We really need new leadership across the board. President Trump, I have complete confidence in. He's shown his policies work. Ken Paxton, he's shown his mettle. He's not afraid to take on. Beyond that, I think everybody else is open for debate.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no doubting Ken's bona fides here. I mean, there's just no doubting that. But he is their golden goose into this thing. And after this primary, all right, I mean, we saw a lot of this, Jeff Rowe versus America First in 22, and Jeff Rowe got creamed. I mean, Axiom got creamed across the board in actual competitive races. And that should have been enough of a wake-up call. But now, after vaporizing almost, I mean, God, by the time this is all said and done, it's not just them, but when you put all of DeSantis's money and support together, you're looking at, I mean, Mitt Romney had less than $1 billion for the entire 2012 cycle, John, and he lost to to Barack Obama. Joe Biden now is raising historic amounts of money, hand over fist. I mean, the guy just pulled in $100 million in the last quarter, just under $100 million. And these consultants, time after time again, they get rich and they vaporize all of Republicans' resources. It doesn't lead to any results. And then when they don't have a seat at the table, they do this crap. I'd go back and I'd remind everybody, does everybody remember Joe Miller in 2010? He beat Lisa Murkowski in the primary in Alaska. And then Lisa Murkowski went on and waged a write-in campaign, which was historic. And she actually beat Joe Miller and the Democrat in the write-in campaign. That's how she remained in the U.S. Senate. Well, all of their friends, they're real cozy with Rove. That's how they were able to do it, even though they didn't have a seat at the table. They infected Joe Miller's campaign, sabotaged it, and then propped up Lisa Murkowski, making a deal with Democrats to get her over the finish line. I mean, these are the people, the kind of people that we're talking about here, John, and there's just not going to be the change that voters think there's going to be, even if the House is swept and a whole bunch of new state legislators are brought in. if they're all run by Axiom, you can kiss any kind of meaningful change goodbye. If John doesn't win Texas 12 and Craig Goldman gets it because Axiom meddled in Texas 12, you can kiss any kind of meaningful change goodbye. Where do you think Craig Goldman's going to be when Donald Trump starts his deportation policy? Where do you think Craig Goldman is going to come down on this, John? When Donald Trump tries to get a better deal for immigration reform, where do you think Craig Goldman is going to come down on this? The guy can't even support a resolution that puts on the ballot, a resolution that puts an amendment on a ballot put up for a people's vote statewide that bars illegal immigrants from being able to vote. He can't even do that. So where do you, it's like Republicans keep doing the same thing over and over again. They're very good at seeing through the BS when it comes to the presidential election, but they are awful down ballot. And it's because of, it's hard when you have this much working against you. It's hard and you don't see it and you don't hear about it, from the media or candidates, because candidates are quite frankly too afraid to come on a show like mine and tell you what's happening behind the scenes. John isn't. So count yourselves lucky. I'm serious. Consider yourselves lucky that somebody has the cojones to go and do this, because he's going to take a lot of crap for this. Believe me when I tell you, the stuff they've already been spreading around town on this man is disgraceful. I mean, back in the day, it's fighting words, John. It's fighting words, I mean, look, politics is a contact sport, so you got to kind of live with it. But it's disgusting. And worse, it shows you where their hearts really lie. They don't give a damn about this country. They don't care. They don't care. They care about how much money they made. They don't care they vaporized $140 million. And, they're rich.
You mean that wasn't a good investment for 20,000 votes in Iowa?
Oh, my God. I mean, John, it's going to go down in history. It will be studied by people like me and people who were, who went through the same kind of stuff I went through in college. I mean, they're gonna read books about this. There will be books written about how this was the biggest grift in presidential history, the worst run campaign in presidential history, and now they're still. I think what I'm asking people is, why do they still have so much relevance? Why do people still give them? John, you were wise. I mean, whether however it shakes out, you did the right thing, not giving them the reins of your campaign. I just don't, and people around President Trump have got to snap out of it, because he basically got manipulated into endorsing Covey. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. And he could have had a good guy, Brian, and I've never met Brian. I'm just telling you what people told me, and I'm telling you what I know. And by the way, he had the ability to fund a lot better, self-fund a lot better than Covey. He would have put up a better fight. And the guy was rock solid, by the way, rock solid. Did you know Brian Mazzola, by the way? Have you met him?
No, I don't know either Mazzola or Covey, but
I'm just privy to some people who did talk to him, and the guy is rocks. He was rock. And I was in a message thread. I just didn't really put my input in, but I did get tagged in a message thread asking my opinion. I could see what he was saying. And when you're in it as long as I've been in it, you know what to listen for. And the guy was legit. He was the real deal. And he had the finances to do it. Can you hang tight? We do a quick commercial break, because I'd really rather talk to you about policy after this. You got a second? Okay, sure. I didn't know how much time you had. All right, let me take a real. Oh, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, for you, whatever it takes.
I love you too, man. I really do. You're you're one of the few. You really are, John. One of the few. All right, we'll be right back. Let's do a quick word from our friends at Brickhouse Nutrition. Listen, keep sending us your feedback. I will try those flavors. There's a lot of positive feedback about some of these new flavors that I have never tried. So I'm going to go ahead and try it myself. But I'm telling you, if you resolved to get healthier in 2024, like I did, like Laura did, it's easy to say it. It's not so easy to do it, especially when you're talking about what you need to intake when it comes to fruit and vegetables on a daily basis. It's not practical. That's why Field of Greens is our healthy superfruit and vegetable habit. It's the only fruit and vegetable product that literally promises better health. At your next checkup, your doctor will notice your improved health or your money back. And do you vitamins or the Big Con Super Beat promises, any of that? They don't. And I can tell you, I got it right in front of me. See that? Hear that? That actually is my blood work. And it did improve restarting Field of Greens in the new year. Each ingredient was selected for a specific reason, a specific health benefit. Some will support your heart, your lungs, kidneys, others, and it's big for me, support metabolism for healthy energy and weight loss. Look, if you want to get healthier in 2024, it starts with Field of Greens. I got you 15% off and free rush shipping. Go to fieldofgreens.com. It's on the screen. Use the promo code TPP for the People's Pundit. That's promo code TPP at fieldofgreens.com. Fieldofgreens.com. Look, this kind of diet, healthy diet, can even help you avoid health risks that run in your family, folks. And Field of Greens will be an important part of that healthy diet. All right, check them out. Back with John O'Shea, Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. If you like the videos, don't forget to like them, share them far and wide. If you're watching on YouTube, mosey on over to Rumble and like and subscribe there as well. Vice versa, ditto. All right, this really does help. It is these metrics. I really can't stress it enough how much that does help. Something that little can make a big difference for us. So go ahead and do that. Of course, the best place to support us and follow us is on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. Peoplespundit.locals.com. Had some great growth through this primary season, and I expect to give you more. All right. And last but not least, the public polling project, share it far and wide. All right, let's get back with John O'Shea. John, you got this fight with Texas. All right. I've had some lawyers on to talk about that ruling, the Supreme Court siding with the Biden administration for now. Both kind of did say, even though they disagreed with it, that they understood because the district judge came to the same conclusion, even though he was conservative and he eviscerated the federal government. He still came to the same conclusion that SCOTUS came to. And we're not talking about dealing with this issue yet on the merit. But tell me what it does to Texas. I mean, it's like every state is a border state now. You know, I just told the story. My friend, she's an elected official, her teenage son, 19 years old, whole life ahead of him, just died because he thought him and his friends would have a little bit of fun with some 5 milligram Percocets. They weren't. It was fentanyl, and he overdosed because his body is not used at all to opiates, and his tolerance was nil. It was nothing. So thinking he was going to pop a 5 milligram Percocet for fun killed him. This is, so it's like every state is a border state, but you guys obviously have a unique situation down there. And I just want you to speak a little bit about the crisis down at the border and what you're hearing from voters and what you think needs to be done.
Well, first of all, while I tip my hat to Governor Abbott for finally taking these measures that he has, my question though really is what took 3 years to get to this place. Candidly speaking, we were okay with the first 8 million illegal invaders, but 8,000,001 was a bridge too far. So I don't know that really anybody deserves the credit here, because candidly speaking, the citizens of this state and the citizens of this country have been left to fend for themselves. I heard Speaker Johnson eviscerate President Biden. And look, his points were all well made. We don't need any new laws. We need the current administration enforcing the existing laws. And in fact, it's a dereliction of duty and a betrayal of the absolute first order of business for the government, which is protecting its citizenry. And we are under a full-scale invasion. The border is controlled by the cartels. The cartels are infiltrated up into the inner parts of the state. You have running car chases that are killing people and innocent bystanders. You have shootings and crimes being perpetrated by cartel members. You have the fentanyl coming in. And I mean, look, we were told under the COVID crisis, not one death. One death is too many. Well, then where the hell are we on the over 100,000 people a year that are dying from fentanyl? And by the way, it's a reverse opium war. It is coming from the Chinese Communist Party, which we know has paid off the current occupant of the White House. And it's also being used, the same trafficking, the same resources for the human trafficking. I have a friend who's been a wonderful supporter of my campaign, and she runs an organization called the Five Stones Foundation. And their whole purpose is to rescue these women and children from the trafficking that's occurring here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. It is heartbreaking that we're like the third largest market right now for sex trafficking. And, the stories that you hear, I mean, there was that Health and Human Services whistleblower that James O'Keefe had on. And, we know of 87,000 children that have disappeared under this feckless government's handling. I'm hearing the numbers closer to 200,000. So and to hear, well, the Supreme Court ruled, and so as a result, Texas should honor it. Well, guess what? The federal court ruled that Biden needed to re-implement the stay and remain in Mexico policy, and he flagrantly flouted that as well. So again, I'll give credit where credit's due. While I thought it was late in coming, I really admire Governor Abbott's position of, all right, will you come down and take it down yourselves? And oh, by the way, we'll just put more back up. Nobody precluded us from being able to take control of our border. If a state can't protect its own sovereignty, then what is the purpose of the government? What is the purpose of us being a part of a republic? It just is. Here's the other thing, though. Sorry, I'm a little fired up about this.
No, do it. Yeah, keep
but when I listened to Speaker Johnson eviscerate President Biden, there was one piece that was pretty critical that was missing. Congress controls the purse strings. You shut down the border or you shut down the government. And for us to be dancing around with, well, let's tie it to spending or funding for Ukraine, or let's wait and see what Senate bill comes out where we're actually going to codify this illegal invasion with Republicans complicit in it, is just disgraceful. We have the means and the mechanism to take control and seize our own sovereignty right now, and yet we lack the moral fortitude to do it. And this, to me, exemplifies exactly why we need more America First candidates in both arms of Congress. We cannot abdicate our responsibility to our brothers and sisters in protecting them from this illegal invasion that is occurring.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what issue can better demonstrate what we've been talking about now for 40 minutes, which is none of this matters. It doesn't matter how many wins you put up on the board for R's. This is not not all R's are created equal. And if Craig Goldman wins this seat, it won't matter. I mean, I agree 100% with Thomas Massey, who said, like last week, he said when that decision came down, he said this should even be a question for the Supreme Court because Congress should and could do their damn job, and that would be the end of it. I mean, and then also we're getting to this point where you're right. That's another thing that needs to be said because Republicans are so weak. Those Republicans are so weak. Democrats and their Democratic presidents choose when they want to abide by or obey the Supreme Court at whim. They decide, all right, I'll listen to that ruling, or maybe not. I'm just going to ignore them. Barack Obama did it too. Joe Biden is doing it. He did it with Remain in Mexico. I'm someone who doesn't think we don't need any more laws, John. No. We don't. We showed that during the Trump administration. There
are no laws that peeled off the books since Trump left the White House that all of a sudden have left Joe Biden without the tools necessary to secure and lock down our border. And in fact, frankly, if there needs to be any legislation, it needs to be a cleanup and a legal definition codified by Congress about what true asylum is, because we shouldn't be allowing the judiciary to determine it's this catch and release policy that they advocate for, and that we need to employ e-verify, because frankly speaking, we need to be looking out after our brothers and sisters. And why people don't concern themselves with the working class in this country, it seems that President Trump was the only person who actually gave them a seat at the table, is just absolutely beyond me, because I think you can tell a lot about a society by how they take care of the least in their society. And right now we're absolutely failing our brothers and sisters.
Yeah, no, it was the name recognition poll, but you have same thing out in California. This is just very, very bad advice in multiple districts. You have incumbents who are in deep trouble. These were incumbents who promised they were going to run on border security. I mean, John Duarte is going to lose. Nobody even wants to work with him, by the way. By the way, guess what? Same thing. Jeff Rowe's network of consultants came in, got McCarthy to help him. Spent $1 million burying an America First candidate. Now look at him. He has no interest whatsoever in fighting with Massey and others who say that really all we have to do is yank on the purse strings. That's it. And that's the only thing Congress should do in this case, because you just said it. The judiciary is the one who is defining what is real asylum and what is not. And of course, the judiciary's role is to interpret law, but Congress could clarify. One of the major problems we have today, and it's from everything, John, from foreign policy to domestic policy, Congress has abdicated their duties and their responsibilities and their power to other branches of government because they're freaking cowards, because they're weak, because they're corrupt, because they're clueless. This is, if not the biggest problem from the, from a governance point of view, this is the biggest problem we have. And that's not going to change until, the different people are elected. And it's really, it's sad. It's like you have this, and I do think it's a majority of the party now, but you have, it is not a whole party that is fighting for these things. It's a part of one of the parties. And that's what's making this battle so tough until you get rid of the others who are like, I don't want to use the T word, but I mean, John, they're not, what would we call? I mean, until you get rid of the traitors in your own ranks, I have to use the T word. There's no other word. Until you get
they're
rid of
either
the traitors
or they're cowards, Rich, because honestly, they run scared. Look, Ronald Reagan, who prior to President Trump, clearly the most effective and best president in our adult lifetimes, shut down government 8 times in his 8 years. And yet this Republican Party absolutely runs scared that the New York Times or the Washington Post might say something bad about them. Look, the voters here understand government's not the solution to their problems. They're the cause of their problems. I know a bunch of people would be happy if the government just shut down regardless right now because they couldn't do or inflict any more damage on them.
He also faced down union threats, even though he was friendly to the working class president. Unions on several occasions threatened, we'll shut down the supply chain. Do you remember the air traffic controllers crisis?
And he just fired him.
Yep. He just was like, you know what? You want to play chicken? You're fired. I mean, this is the way it used to be. And now we don't have enough of them. And by the way, he could have accomplished so much more if he didn't have traitors. John McCain was a complete traitor to him, and others like him. There wouldn't even, I want people to try to grasp what I'm saying. If Ronald Reagan didn't have traitors betray him, there wouldn't even be a Department of Education right now. Think about how many problems Republicans, conservatives, specifically America Firsters, associate with the Department of Education when we're talking about different things, whether it's, molding these people into believing in things like DEI when they get out into the private sector, critical race theory, all this stuff.
And let's also not forget the fact that he actually was duped into, we'll shut down the borders and secure the borders, and then you can grant amnesty. Well, that attributed to California going from red to blue. And he admits that was probably the biggest political mistake he made in his career.
And yet there are senators and members of the House of Representatives right now, one in your state, Dan Crenshaw, more than one in your state. But Dan Crenshaw was just vocal about it yesterday and said, I just don't get it. If we have a chance to do anything good, why wouldn't we? Because you're not. The good is overwhelmingly outweighed by the bad. And that should have been the lesson from the deal Ronald Reagan regretted for the rest of his life. So I just don't understand how these people fail to learn lessons, John, over and over and over again. It's 1:26. I kept you for a long time. I got one more really, I guess. Jobs report came out today. They're clearly downward revisions again for the prior month. But big job creation, 300,000+ jobs. People aren't feeling it, John. They're not feeling it. I mean, I got to tell you, I think that the bureaucrats are fudging these numbers intentionally. I do. I believe that wholeheartedly. You have somebody like Reality Winner who is willing to leak a top secret classified document to hurt Donald Trump. Then you're certainly going to have some nutcase ideologue at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, a team of them, willing to fudge a household survey. I mean, that's where we've seen them do it before. They did it for Obama, but people still aren't feeling it. There's this disconnect in the polls. Where do you think the economy? I mean, I see hazards everywhere when I look at the economy. And you have the experience to talk about this. For people who don't know, John spent he has a vast experience in the financial sector. He was the man to talk to when we had the banking issues. Now we have the feds looking towards, what was it, May, I think it was, for the rate increase, or that's where people at least think they're looking at somewhere in the spring. that could lead to problems again with the banks, John. I mean, don't you see hazards everywhere? And meanwhile, they're fudging these employment situation reports, these monthly
Oh,
employment.
yeah.
It's
No,
crazy.
look, whoever branded Bidenomics should be absolutely
He says it
terminated.
all the
Yeah.
time.
Well, and look, I mean, to your point, you can't lie to people about their own lived experiences.
Yeah.
The government is,
Yeah.
like you said, they fudge the numbers, they revise them downward, they try and explain, oh my gosh, things are going so well, and yet people aren't feeling it. And this is with excessive government deficit spending. If it weren't for the growth in the government sector of our economy right now, we'd already be in a recession. Candidly speaking, I think realistically we are. But like you said, they're playing politics. You have the Fed clearly has not snuffed out inflation yet, and yet they're starting to lower rates and doing quantitative easing because it's a presidential election year, and they're trying to facilitate Biden being able to have this platform to run on. We have too many people in all aspects of Washington D.C. right now that are more worried about the political gains than the actual people of this country. And unfortunately, it's not just isolated to the United States of America. It seems to be the entire West, the whole Judeo-Christian West, is ruled by a bunch of elected leaders who actually have contempt for their citizens.
Yeah.
And, your point's well made. Until we change this, until we get different people in there who actually understand that they're there to serve, they're not there to prop themselves up and to benefit by managing the decline of this country, we're going to continue to see the same results over and over again. And your point's also well made that we have these consultants and companies on the fringe that kind of dabble in and try and play kingmaker, and they need to get out of the way, and they need to let the American voice actually be heard, and let the will of the voter actually finally prevail.
And I can even understand the market. They played for your campaign. It didn't work. So that's it. I mean, that's the market, and then to meddle afterwards. First of all, it's childish. Second of all, it's putting ambition and your own personal interest against above the interest of the party and the nation. So I don't know what kind of a person you are when you do things like that. Just a word on the jobs report. You said lived experience. And to me, that's it. So they're out there touting it right now. Meanwhile, people made less money this month than they did in December. Or it's February now, but people made less in January than they did in December. The average work week is the lowest since the Great Recession in 2010. I mean, this is just, I just don't know how you can go out there and tout these numbers. And by the way, who are these jobs going to? These jobs that are being created. You have a professional class service sector economy that's getting most of these jobs, and then in the goods producing sector, or manufacturing, construction, they're not even going to domestic workers. I mean, that's the truth of it, John. So you're seeing this is because that's still counted, folks. I hope you understand that. They're not just American citizens. It's a household survey. All right. So lived experience is going to come into factor. Bush, he kept arguing the economy's recovered. The economy's recovered. And yet Bill Clinton I feel your pain. I know it hasn't. And I know it doesn't feel that way to you. And I feel your pain. He won. Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton tried telling the country 2%, 2.5%. That's the new normal. Things are good. They're good. And the people didn't listen. So, right. By the way, this is nothing. 2.5% is nothing compared to what we saw under Trump and what we were going to get in that final stretch until COVID hit. So sad, because the housing market was coming back. In line, it would have been the fourth and final cylinder firing on all cylinders, the economy. And unfortunately, the Chinese and their domestic allies here in the U.S. had something else to say about it. Never believe in coincidences, my friend. Tell people where they can follow you, John, where they can, go check out, learn more about you, and then help you out, support you, whatever they want to do.
Yeah, no, thanks, Rich. So again, John O'Shea running for Texas's 12th Congressional District. It is a grassroots America First campaign running up against the Rhino establishment on multiple fronts, as we apparently discussed. But that's okay. Look, I see God's hand in this, and the duty is mine. The results are up to God. So if you want to get in, if you want to support, if you want to learn more about my campaign, you can go to OSHEA4Texas.org. That's O'Shea, OSHEA, 4, Texas.org. I appreciate you, Rich.
All the best, John. Come back and see us real soon, buddy. All the best.
Sounds good. All right.
John O'Shea, ladies and gentlemen, Texas's 12th Congressional District. All right, we're not going to take a break. It's 1:33. Let's roll into Q&As. Look, I know John's being gracious there. I just want to say, look, that there is. I'm going to bring this point up, and I'm just going to leave it at that. Like, because there is no questioning Ken Paxton's his heart and his conviction. That's not it. But we're just in a point where it's not all right to ignore some stuff anymore. And just a couple of days ago, just an enlightening situation. Like, what happened to that guy, Brian Mazzola? What happened to that other guy? Like, he had no idea that his own consultants ran that guy out of the race. And Dade Phelan is reelected. And if he wins this primary, which sadly I think he's going to, outside of even a runoff, I think he's going to get to 50+1. It looks like he is. And I'm not saying that to throw cold water on anybody. I'm simply saying that what good is a Trump endorsement if you don't have the resources to get people out, to get it out there, to explain to people you have it? Brian had the ability. He was a better fundraiser. Sadly, you need money. And he was also, I don't know Covey, but I tell you, Brian was rock solid. I mean, just telling you, he was. And they're doing this stuff. And not only that, but, the gatekeeper, I mean, these guys have been friends for 30 years. The gatekeeper is completely controlled by Jeff Rowe's people, by Axiom and Nick Maddox. And, it took an enormous amount of time and effort to get John on the schedule for a fundraiser. That stuff normally doesn't happen. And by the way, who parked next to John's fundraiser recently that just happened? Nikki Haley. She's been going around looking for these America First campaigns and just miraculously ends up parked next to them trying to, raise money. And it's not, how could that be a coincidence? I just don't believe in politics. I don't believe in coincidences. I just don't. All right. Let's get to some of your questions. Would Haley, I mean, look, Nebraska too for Haley. That's actually a good point. That may be an area where Haley could do better, but do you want to win back Nebraska too and lose Michigan? Or do you want to win Michigan and lose Nebraska too? Even when you're talking about some of the smaller states, I don't think Nikki Haley would carry Iowa. 31 pivot counties in the state of Iowa, the most out of any, if you want to even call them competitive or battleground states. We've come to believe that Iowa is not competitive anymore with Donald Trump, but that is because of Donald Trump. 31 counties voted for Barack Obama, yet voted for Donald Trump. And while, yes, Republicans have control of the entire state delegation in the House of Representatives, one of those districts is not always Republican. It goes back and forth. In 18, part of that state swung significantly back against them without Donald Trump on the ballot. If the Republicans move back to the Craig Goldman model and, the Kevin McCarthy model and the Jeff Rowe model, they will lose those states. Mark my words, that will happen. So while Nikki Haley might do better in Nebraska too, I'd rather do better in Maine too, because she's not going to carry Maine too. Why? They're both the same, right? Electoral votes. Because Maine too is going to tell us a lot more about some of the other demographics in states that, I think it's fair to say that they have an overrepresentation in the Electoral College. White working class voters are overrepresented in the Electoral College. And by the way, as it should be, because they're underrepresented everywhere else. They have no say in most aspects or elements or environments of our modern political system. So at least for now, they have that say. And by the way, you can see it in that poll in Georgia. Holy crap. That's why Nikki Haley can't carry Georgia. That's why she's down in the poll in Fox News. Because she's not doing well with working class, and she's doing a little bit better with white educated voters. That's great. She still underperforms everywhere else, including the Atlanta metro area. She doesn't get the non-white working class vote that Trump gets. And when you're talking about states like Georgia, Arizona, where now Hispanic working class vote is going to be key to winning that state, to even competing in Maricopa County, and Gila, outside of parts of Pima, sure, but I mean, this is not even debatable, Ray Texera, I chose that article he wrote, the author of The Emerging Democratic Majority. I chose that article on purpose to go over that day because he gets it. He's pulling the fire alarm. You don't believe the polls in Michigan? That's up to you. Good for you, better. Dan. Yep, we're doing a Q&A, so let me run. I know the continued campaign by Haley is meant to drain Trump's resources, but isn't there an advantage to Trump continually getting chances to publicly separate himself from the GOP old guard and trigger realignment? Why not use this as an opportunity to tie Haley and Biden together and so a seamless primary to general seamless primary to general campaign approach? This is what I would say to that. In a normal election, Dan, maybe like a 2016 situation, I actually do think that the extended primary benefited Trump. It gave a chance. It provided constant chances for Bernie Sanders' voters to say, you know what, or 12 to 16% of them, depending on what state you're looking at, to say, you know what, I actually think Donald Trump probably is the better bet over Hillary Clinton. If Bernie's not going to be the nominee, I'm listening to Trump in Indiana. I'm listening to Trump in Wisconsin. I'm listening to Trump in Michigan. And, there's more in line with what he is saying and the Bernie agenda at that time. Bernie's agenda is very different now. And it was very different in 20 than it was in 16. So I think it helped him in that situation. But here in this one, I would just say this. Both of these men have universal name ID. Both of these men have records as president. I'm not sure there's any more of a distinction to draw. The only question is who's going to have the ballot chasing operation, who's going to have the turnout machine. Trump is I was talking to Charlie Kirk about this on a show yesterday, and we were talking about this. Yeah, Trump is a turnout machine, but why would you want to take that risk? That money has got to go, instead of fighting Nikki Haley, it's got to go towards building that outreach, getting those unlikely voters to vote, getting those adults who Trump leads by like 20 points with the adult non-registered sample, getting them registered, getting them out. Because could you imagine, as Trump being the turnout machine that he is, see New Hampshire, for those who are still in their own reality, could you imagine marrying the organic Trump turnout appeal with a physical get out the vote infrastructure, ballot chasing infrastructure? Like, this election could be over at 11:45 at night. It doesn't matter what they do at 2, 3 in the morning. It wouldn't be enough. I mean, he would just trounce him and we would be able to go home and go to sleep pretty early. And it wouldn't be a 3 a.m. night like it was and always is now. So, I mean, my point is, I just don't think there's anyone left to not that there's nobody left. I just don't think the game is persuasion anymore and drawing that line. I think people know where that line is largely. And I think the people who don't, maybe Democrats who are out there who are willing to vote for Nikki Haley, who don't know Nikki Haley is, way outside of their views on things like abortion, but also on a war making and Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid. The only thing it could do, and I think you're going to see this as time goes on, there'll be people left who just hate Trump and will continue this little charade. By the way, you notice some media have caught on to Primary Pivot. That is the organization we were talking about. And somebody finally reported on it yesterday, News Nation, couple of weeks too late. I think you'll be left with those rabid ideologues who just hate Trump so much. They're still willing to vote for Nikki Haley. But as time goes on, those Democrats who are willing to do that there will be some who don't think that her vote, she's worth their vote. They're going to find out about her Social Security positions and stuff like that. But again, regardless, those voters are going to vote for Joe Biden. And you're not going to stop them from doing that. I just don't know. I see what you're saying, Dan. In a normal cycle, I would totally get it. But because they know, everyone knows who these people are already, it's $1 spent on that is a dollar wasted that could have went toward the vote chasing. And the registration. It's all very unsexy work, very not at all sexy work, but that's the work that's got to be done. Did you see the disparity in how much the DNC spent on get out the vote texting versus the Republican Party? And people are mocking the flowers thing and everything, but DNC spent about $800 on flowers. The Republican Party spent 70-something thousand on flowers. They don't even have that many events, so I don't know. Friend of mine, he's a watcher of the show, actually. I don't know if he's here. I don't know if he wants me to blow it up, but went to the second floor of one of the RNC offices. There's nobody there. It's empty. They're broke. They spent almost nothing on text get out the vote. Some of this I can justify and say, like, because I do know that they were trying to have a seat at the table. They did have a seat at the table with some of the AI stuff that was being developed. They don't even understand its use. They really don't. $70,000 on get out the vote texting. You believe that, Laura? We could spend that on a few polls. Texting for a few polls, a couple of polls. That's why people have nerve when some of the detractors are like, the public polling project's $8,000 a poll. That's great. Polling is more than that. We spend the rest of it. Rich, regarding Texas, are Republican voters waking up to how badly they have been and are being treated by beta Republican legislators? They are the reason Dems keep predicting Texas turning blue. Don't even need a majority of Dems in office anyway. I'm telling you, that's such a great, that's W.C. Gurn. What a great observation. I think you're going to see a lot of these people go down that Paxton has targeted. I don't think at this point Covey has the juice to beat Dade Phelan. I think Steve Mazzola was the guy. So you can thank Jeff Rowe and Nick Maddox at Axiom Strategies for losing that. And if you don't take out enough of Dade Phelan's people and he survives, nothing's going to change. I'm sorry. I'm just giving you guys the reality. So the answer to that is I don't think enough of them have woken up to it. I don't. Craig Goldman shouldn't even be in the race against John O'Shea. And he shouldn't even be raising money. I mean, the people should know that he has no chance. And instead, John's got to fight. It's like amazing. If this is the best evidence that you know, the best evidence that you could ever present to somebody about, proving that these people are frauds is a race like John O'Shea's or a race like David Giglio, by the way. There is no reason to put Craig Goldman, if you are America first, if you're even conservative, right? Laura, you understand what I'm saying? There's no reason. You would look at John O'Shea and you would say, oh yeah, man, this guy's going to be great. We totally agree on everything. Everything publicly I say I'm for, he is for. There is no reason for Craig Goldman to get in the race. Only if Craig Goldman is a fraud and you are a fraud supporting him, would he ever be put into that race. It wouldn't be worth the money, wasting the money, primarying good people, unless you want to stop that good person and instead install a piece of shit who's going to betray the voter time and time again. And by the way, if Texas does go blue, which I think it probably will by the year 2034, if this keeps up, I do. And then I'm being generous, by the way. There's not a whole lot people can do about it if Republicans keep behaving like this. That's it. Because you're not giving the growing demographics in Texas a reason to vote for you. In fact, you're giving them a reason not to vote for you. That you're untrustworthy. You're a liar. You lie to your own voter and your own people. Why on earth would they want to join your club of deception? They'll go with the Democrat who will throw them some crumbs. It's a great comment, though. But would Rich consider lumping Georgia together with South Carolina as like a Sun Belt, Bible Belt poll, or is Georgia starting to get too far away for Biden? That's a good question. If we did do a Sun Belt poll, I mean, I can't lump it together with the South Carolina poll. South Carolina is a big state. So is Georgia. That would be a lot of money. So I can't do that. That's why I'm waiting for Georgia to be funded. And believe me, it's all in the same place. It's sitting in what we normally do is take it and put it in a savings thing. And because they transfer it every 3 days or something I think it's like Stripe. It's like 3 days. But it's there. And when we hit 100%, we'll poll Georgia. But South Carolina's coming up, so to add those two together, it would be a lot of money. It would. Now, if we do a Sun Belt poll, then yeah, I mean, it's part of the Sun Belt. It is. So, I mean, I would add that. I think that would be, I don't know. I mean, what is that? Florida, you got Florida, Georgia, Carolinas, right? All the way to Arizona. We wouldn't do Texas, of course. We wouldn't do all of them though, because Texas isn't competitive. It's just not with Trump anyway. Obviously, clearly, it will be closer. I think Florida could vote to the right of Texas this time. I do. I think Trump's going to win Florida by 10 points, guys. I do. I think he's going to crush Joe Biden there. You guys see that Joe Biden told the owners, we can win Florida. God. Not you, Joe. However, thanks to Ron DeSantis, you may get a Democratic governor if you're in Florida. And I love Florida. It was my state for 15 plus years. It would be tragic after all the work. All of these frauds who came out of the woodwork with their Twitter accounts in 2022 act like they and Ron DeSantis turned Florida red. What an insult that is to the people who actually turned Florida red. But yeah, Dweej, I mean, that would just be, it would be a lot of money. And I assume you mean adding it to the South Carolina poll we're going to do now or soon. It's a lot of money. A lot of money, buddy. Serious. A lot of money. I'll be honest with you. You're asking me to spend like another $13,000. It's a lot of money because it's such a big state. My question for today is, why are DeSantis influencers like, I don't even know if I want to say that guy's name, still trashing Trump and sowing division? What year was his Twitter account created in? I know that one. I know who you're talking about. Cernovich trashes him almost now on a daily basis. What year was his Twitter account created? See, I'm telling you, Laura and I were talking about this. Was it last night, baby, or two nights ago? Because of other project we were doing. It's not in the data.
2 nights ago.
2 nights ago. It's not, they're not in the data. They would show in the polling data. And it's not just us. Yeah, it was 2 nights ago, right? Because we were talking about the Bloomberg polls came out. And I'm like, look, Bloomberg's finding the same thing we're finding. What is that? It's twice as many 2020 voter crossover in favor of Donald Trump. Twice as many. Donald Trump's base of support is stronger than Biden's. Like this fracture of these people who say, I was for DeSantis, like Cernovich is calling them only DeSantis. And they're also trying to call themselves never again Trump. I don't think they're real. I think they were always never Trump. Always. And they're not real. Most of those accounts, including that one, that scam, that little twerp, he created his account, I think it was in May of 2022. It's not real. They're trying, but it can be real. So psyops work that way. They create something out of whole cloth and they fabricate it. But when you repeat it enough and you push it enough and you basically speak things into existence. And listen, if you're a Christian or you're not even a Christian, if you're a believer, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, the Bible is filled with words have power. God said, let there be light. Boom. So the Big Bang happened. That's the way things work in politics. It is, you can make something true that wasn't true before if you keep pretending it is, right? So many women, educated suburban women, were told to be Democrats after 2016. Donald Trump did not lose white educated women in 2016. He won them. He did better than expected in 2020, but they made that a truth by repeating it over and over again. Believe me, that conversation started long before he ever started to slip with suburban women, ever. And that is what you're seeing here with these people. They're not real. All right. That turd Robert and his fake AI poll, he's another one. They're not real. Oh, look at this. I got 10% on my Twitter poll that says they're never voting for Trump. Dude, shut the up. You're not a pollster. Twitter is not real polls, not a scientific poll. You have a bunch of other scammers and never Trumpers following you. So that is where your 10% is coming from. That is not in the data. It is not in the national data or statewide for that matter. Some states here and there, you'll see something, some fracture, but Trump's base on the whole is more that those people there. This is their point is what. So to answer your question, this is what you need to, ridicule is always the best. Ridicule is just always best. They're not real. Tell them you know what they are. You're just a scam account. By the way, that one that you mentioned and another one that who's Brian Griffin pretending to be somebody named Max, right? They are all over. And I should update some of them. Oh God, you know what, guys? They've been at this for a long time. Let me see if I could just give you one example. If it's here on my computer. I'm not sure if they are here on my computer. I could have swore, Laura, we had them. I may have gotten rid of them recently. Damn, I did. Unless they're named under something else, but we had been screenshotting them and following them all election cycle. It's like that account that has named them that question. Oh no, it's right there. Why didn't it pick it up? Does it give it to me or will let me? Nope, it's not doing it. Yeah, let me see if I can do one more. Hold on. Come on. Here's one. They would be, for instance, and so this is going to be very hard to see in this format, but I just wanted to show it to you. And it's going to be hard for me. It's going to go and superimpose all over me. You will see the ats from several of these were created in 2022. These are all DeSantis bots saying the same thing. And yet you'll see that one, we have screenshots of that one in particular as well that you mentioned in your question. It seems like they say something and then all of these bots regurgitate the exact same thing. Okay. In this case, it was that old Rig Swo account or whatever. And that came from Max Nordau. And he said something about Trump NFTs. And then all of a sudden, Trump NFT was way better. 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 They're all those accounts, these so-called only DeSantis, never again Trump accounts. It's not real. Again, it's not in people. And we were grabbing screenshots of this all cycle long. There are so many of them. And that one that you mentioned, because they're talking about that Peter account. He's in it constantly. So we don't think it's real. We think that this is people who used Ron DeSantis. Maybe Ron knew about it, maybe he didn't. But listen, it is enough to put him firmly in the never trust again category. And considering we now know him and Casey went through every message that went out, every email that went out. I spoke to a friend who abandoned Team DeSantis, okay, and is now back trying to get back onto MAGA. And I had talked to that particular person about the smear they ran against me. And they told me the higher ups knew everything. The candidate knew everything. So they knew and by the way, he's the governor of Florida. He knew what they were saying about me was a lie. Mm-hmm. He knew blatant lie. Even if he doesn't know he was being used by Never Trump, him. You know what I'm saying? All right. So, I don't think they're real. They're not in the data. If they show up in the data, I'll let you know, guys, but they're just not there now. I cannot add the map into question. I'll summarize it. If she lose all six, Battlegrounds, like, would she? Oh yeah, Haley. Oh God, I think you're talking about a huge blowout, folks. I do. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, gone. Maybe she'd win North Carolina. Maybe. I don't think she would win Florida. I don't. DeSantis was having trouble winning Florida. Iowa, I don't think she'd win. Ohio, maybe, but I don't know. She could do better in Franklin County. But again, I think you're talking about just a massive blowout. Minnesota, no chance, because Ramsey and Hennepin and all those in Dakotas, they're not voting for her. All right. Even if they do a little bit, it doesn't matter, because in southwestern Minnesota and southeastern, all around Olmsted, she's going to get killed. And Olmsted, where Trump actually does a little bit better, the 1st Congressional District, for instance, that's another area in general. She's just not going to do well. And McCain was supposed to have done well in Minnesota too. Remember, he's moderate. Mitt Romney could maybe win Minnesota because he's moderate. He'll do better in the Twin Cities. We hear this. It's great. So why the title of this is Groundhog Day. It's not only a hat tip to the fact that it's February 2. I got a day named after me, right? February 2. Jack Frost. You guys know what I'm talking about? It's not only because it is actually Groundhog Day. We're, of course, referring to the movie with Bill Murray, where it's every damn time we hear the same stuff over and over again. Yeah, you are looking at a blowout. Is he considering becoming a bigger part of making sure MAG candidates are known and do better and how these plans come together? It's a tough decision for me because I don't like to work for campaigns. So the best thing I can do right now for you guys, honestly, is, that list. And it's going to be a list not just for MAGA, for everybody. Look, if you're a liberal, you probably want to vote for this person. If you are, member of the squad, this person is better squaddy. It's just not that divide in the Democratic Party right now that there is in the Republican. But if you're a traditional Republican, then you're not going to want to take my recommendation for who I think you should. Well, maybe you will. But I mean, if you're a rhino, let me put it that way, you're not going to want to take my recommendation for Rich's popular picks, So, or the People's Pundits populist picks. It's going to be like a voter guide, so it would be fair. That's what I feel comfortable doing right now because I feel it's in line with my role, which is talking to voters and trying to convey what voters really do believe and understand. I don't think it's wrong for me to help voters navigate this like sea of manipulation that they have to navigate every freaking election because of money and liars. Will the turnout during the Dem South Carolina primary be able to tell us anything about how much Haley bullshit we will see in the yes. Yes, I think we are going to at least get some indication of that. Is there somewhere that has all the America not yet? That's what I'm working on. It. How are things changing in Illinois for the GOP? Same thing. I know you care about Illinois a lot. Honestly, I'm hoping we'll be able to update you on that real soon, but so far it's kind of stalemated. Democrats can raise a fortune on state legislative races. Meanwhile, people with good ideas, that are really doing the right thing or trying to do the right thing for their voters on the Republican side can't. They got to show them like a test case or something first and proof of concept. It's so stupid. The proof of concept is that you're getting your ass kicked, and that's what Democrats do. Don't you want to do what they do? Hopefully they'll have some luck soon, and then I'll be able to update you on that. What is the odds Nikki Haley is buying up convention votes? Probably pretty high, although the rules are still the rules right now. And it doesn't look like, DC, Trump's case was just taken off the ballot. Taken off the docket. I have Jacket 205, so I'm trying to lighten around this puppy. Meaning there will be no conviction. They're losing reasons to justify removing or passing a resolution to remove the 2-round bound rule, which is that you are a pledged delegate. You are bound to the results of the primary for at least 2 rounds of voting. Now, if somebody didn't clinch, then you can be unbound after 2 rounds, but he's going to clinch. He's going to. So it's getting pretty tough for her. He's beating people. It's been a rough ride, but he is winning. Mike Turner, you're like the third person to ask me about that. The best thing that you can do, honestly, is do you know anybody personally? Because you will need to do like what John O'Shea did. Make sure you know the players in and around your local area. You can't just jump in the race without help from people, and you'll get smoked as a no-name. So those people aren't going to tell you. They're not going to help you. In that area, they're not going to help you. So you got to find somebody else that you think is maybe you can, your area better than anybody. But it would help if those people were involved in local politics. Does Texas move to the right in 24? I think as of right now, you are seeing it move anywhere between 2 and 4 points. We'll see how that is. That can change over time, but that's where we're at right now. Which previous president had the most comparable rural urban coalition that Trump is looking to create today? Nobody, honestly, in the modern era. But it is looking slightly like a Roosevelt kind of supported, Grover Cleveland kind of supported position. But Nixon would probably be the closest right now in, although that's only by geography, not totally demographics, but Nixon is probably the closest. Join the book club on Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. All right. Well, we're talking about that actually right now. Have to wonder if Rona's a saboteur. I think she's trying to figure out how she's going to survive. How big of a W is the DC trial falling off the big W? That's what I was just talking about. It's not just for the Dems, but the never Trumpers who wanted to use it. It's a big W. And by the way, Trump's legal team was adamant. I've spoken to different ones. They were adamant that this will not see a courtroom before the election. It looks like they were right. If Trump loses, what will be his role? Do you think MAGA will evaporate? Depends. That's a good question. I don't think we know the answer to that yet, but I don't think people are ever going back. I think the party will just fracture. What are the odds for school choice in Texas next time? I should have asked that it depends how successful Ken Paxton is. That's the answer to that question. Like, they just suck to go to. Is Rich attending CPAC this year? If they invite me to speak, maybe I'll go, but I don't go anymore just to go. I just don't. It's when you've seen them once, you've seen them all. All right, don't forget, share the public polling project far and wide. Share the videos far and wide. If you like the video, don't forget to like it and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. What else am I missing here? Join Jack right now, 205. I'm going to go talk to my friend Poso over at Human Events. Nothing but love for you guys. Keep an eye out for both the Democratic and the Republican South Carolina graphics. They will be out soon. So much else. And join, of course, the best place to follow us is on Locals. peoplespundit.locals.com. Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The emerging Republican majority back with it. Kevin Phillips, great, brilliant piece of work. All right, thanks, guys, so much. Nothing but love for you. And I will see you over on Human Events very, very shortly. All the best, folks.